The US, France, and their allies called for an immediate 21-day ceasefire along the Israel-Lebanon border on Wednesday, while also supporting one in Gaza after emergency talks among the UN Security Council. The ceasefire would apply to the Israel-Lebanon Blue Line, allowing both sides to seek a diplomatic solution, according to a senior official in the Biden administration. The statement released by the White House said, quote, "We call on all parties, including the governments of Israel and Lebanon, to endorse the temporary ceasefire immediately," and was backed by allies including Australia, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and the EU. Earlier in the day, Israel had expanded airstrikes in Lebanon, killing 72 people according to Lebanese health ministry statements, with a possible ground assault raising concerns of a wider war. The senior Biden official said that Washington had been working for months to rein in hostilities between Israel and Lebanon, and that it had been a focus of, quote, almost every discussion President Joe Biden was having with world leaders this week. Lebanese Prime Minister Najib Mikati had addressed the UN Security Council earlier in the day.
Lebanon today is victim to an enemy that is using electronic, cyber, sea, and air attacks against us that could turn into a ground attack and set the stage for an all-out regional war. I hope to return to my country armed with your explicit stance, calling for the cessation of this aggression out of respect for the sovereignty and safety of my country.
Israel's UN ambassador Danny Danon then defended his country's actions to the council.
Israel does not seek a full-scale war. We have made our desire for peace clear to all those who are not blinded by hatred and political agendas. However, Israel is under attack.
Meanwhile, Iran reiterated its support for Hezbollah, warning of further escalation. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was due to arrive in New York on Thursday and address the UN General Assembly on Friday.
The updated version of the document proposes that aggression against Russia by any non-nuclear weapon state, but with the participation or support of a nuclear weapon state, should be regarded as a joint attack on the Russian Federation. The conditions for Russia's transition to the use of nuclear weapons are also clearly defined. We will consider such a possibility as soon as we receive reliable information about a massive launch of aerospace attack means and their crossing of our state border, meaning strategic or tactical aircraft, cruise missiles, drones, hypersonic missiles, and other aircraft.
Беспилотники, гиперзвуковые и другие летательные аппараты. Являем за собой право.
We reserve the right to use nuclear weapons in the event of aggression against Russia and Belarus as a member of the Union State. All these issues have been agreed upon with the Belarusian side and with the president of Belarus. This includes cases when the enemy, using conventional weapons, poses a critical threat to our sovereignty.
It is now my belief that the federal government intends to charge me with crimes. If so, these charges will be entirely false, based on lies. But they would not be surprising. I always knew that if I stood my ground for all of you, that I would be a target. And a target I became. For months, leaks and rumors have been aimed at me in an attempt to undermine my credibility and paint me as guilty. Just this past week, they searched the home of our new police commissioner, looking for documents from 20 years ago, just 1 week after he joined my administration. Enough. I will fight these injustices with every ounce of my strength and my spirit. If I'm charged, I know I am innocent. I will request an immediate trials so the New Yorkers can hear the truth. New Yorkers know my story. They know where I come from. I have been fighting injustice my entire life. That fight has continued as your mayor. Despite our pleas, when the federal government did nothing as its broken immigration policies overloaded our shelter system with no relief, I put the people of New York before party and politics. Now, if I am charged, many may say I should resign because I cannot manage the city while fighting the case. I can also understand how everyday New Yorkers will be concerned that I cannot do my job while I face accusation. But I have been facing these lies for months since I began to speak out for all of you and their investigation started. Yet the city has continued to improve. Make no mistake, you elected me to lead this city, and lead it I will. I humbly ask for your prayers and your patience as we see this through. God bless you, and God bless the city of New York.
Inside these brown boxes at an undisclosed location in a Washington state government facility is the abortion medication mifepristone.
We need a state that will protect American women.
Washington Governor Jay Inslee's administration purchased 30,000 doses of the drug last year as a federal lawsuit sought to restrict access to abortion medication nationwide. The U.S. Supreme Court rejected that case in June, keeping mifepristone on the market. Inslee said the state will maintain its stockpile, which is enough to supply the state's abortion patients for an estimated 3 years. He remains concerned about what Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump would do if he won the November 5th election against Democratic U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris.
The Supreme Court decision was not definitive in protecting mifepristone regarding the FDA authorization. The court said there was no standing, which leads them later on to be able to pull the rug out from underneath women with the help of Donald Trump. So as long as Trump is on the scene, that risk exists. And so I'm glad that we have that stockpiles.
Trump has sometimes taken a muddled position on abortion, including mifepristone, which is commonly prescribed as part of a 2-drug regimen to end early pregnancies. In August, the former president suggested he might be open to directing the Food and Drug Administration to revoke access to the drug if he wins the election, though his campaign later said he would not seek to do so. Inslee said the issue transcends Trump.
This is a long-term threat. Those who want to take away reproductive health for women, they're not going to stop last week, this week, or next week. It is a multi-decadal effort, and we have to continually keep people out of public office who can threaten women in this country. That certainly includes this November.
Protecting reproductive freedom.
Harris and other Democrats have made abortion a central campaign issue this year. A majority of Americans say abortion should be legal in most or all cases, according to Reuters Ipsos polling.
I tell you, I can't wait to debate the guy.
Democratic vice presidential candidate Tim Walz gets his chance to face off against Republican vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance Tuesday in their only scheduled debate before the November 5th election. Donald Trump's running mate is a U.S. Senator from Ohio and best-selling author of Hillbilly Elegy. Vance coined the term childless cat ladies to disparage Democrats and latched onto a made-up story about Haitian immigrants eating pets.
These are stories that people have been living for months or in some cases years. The only thing that Donald Trump and I did is highlighted and focused on him so that you guys would stop ignoring the American people.
Kamala Harris's VP pick is a former high school teacher and football coach who served in Congress and is currently the governor of Minnesota. Walz has called his Republican opponents weird, a label that quickly stuck.
These guys are creepy and yes, just weird as hell. That's what you see.
A person involved with Vance's debate prep said he would try to portray Walz as a leftist masquerading as a moderate. Vance has also accused him of leaving the Army National Guard to avoid getting deployed to Iraq.
I think what actually might happen based on his military service is he's going to bail out at the last minute but say he went anyway. I think that's the Tim Walz approach to the debate.
These guys are even attacking me for my record of service. And I just want to say, I'm proud to have served my country, and I always will be.
Walz has cast Vance as out of touch and an Ivy League educated wonk. A debate expert told Reuters that the most important job for both candidates is to be an effective surrogate and proxy for their respective campaigns. Vance may have to work to connect with the public, as polls show he is viewed more unfavorably than Walz. A Pew Research Center poll this month showed 34% of Americans view Vance favorably, while 42% viewed him unfavorably. Walz was viewed favorably by 39% of Americans, while 33% had an unfavorable opinion.
Floridians were bracing on Wednesday for the potentially catastrophic impact of Hurricane Helene. Helene entered the Gulf of Mexico that afternoon and was forecast to rapidly strengthen into a Category 4 storm as it picks up strength from the Gulf's warm waters, with winds up to 156 miles per hour, before making an expected landfall Thursday evening in Florida's Panhandle. National Hurricane Center Deputy Director Jamie Rome said that meant potentially, quote, catastrophic wind impacts for those in the path of the storm. In the city of Clearwater, people filled sandbags on Wednesday as they prepared for a potentially life-threatening storm surge, which could reach as high as 20 feet in the Big Bend area, north of Clearwater, where the storm is expected to hit.
I'm worried about the storm surge, the water that could be 4 to 8 feet in my house, and I lose everything. We came out here and we're actually having a really good time getting prepped with everybody and getting input on how everybody is prepping. So it's been really good, and it's helping me to calm down and come here with my community.
The National Hurricane Center said Helene was expected to dump up to 15 inches of rain in some spots after making landfall, causing severe flooding. Rome noted about half of lives lost in hurricanes typically come from flash flooding, often among people who drive into flooded roads and are swept away. He urged those in affected areas to use caution. The Hurricane Center said more than 40 million people in Florida, Georgia, and Alabama were under hurricane and tropical storm warnings. Evacuations were ordered along Florida's Gulf Coast, and dozens of counties have announced school closures.
Sri Lankans woke up on Wednesday to newspaper headlines reporting that just days after winning election, the country's new president had dissolved the legislature. That means a snap parliamentary election will happen November 14th. This is just another massive expenditure, this man says, while this man thinks it's a good move to start afresh. What does President Anurakumara Dissanayake hope to accomplish with a fresh parliament, and what are the risks for the debt-ridden nation? Dissanayake won Saturday's presidential election with the support of 5.6 million voters, or just over 42%. His nearest rival garnered less than 33% support. The Marxist-leaning leader with no political lineage rode a wave of support as a candidate of change. Change that many felt was desperately needed after Sri Lanka's economic collapse in 2022. He acknowledged in his inaugural speech on Monday that Sri Lankans have a very negative view of politicians. We have a deep understanding that we have a challenging country. Our politics must be cleaner, he said. We will commit ourselves to that. He's promised to cut taxes and free up revenue for public investment. But to deliver on policy, he needs a parliament that reflects his program, and he's betting a snap election will give him that. The National People's Power Alliance, which includes Disanayake's JVP party, held just 3 seats in the last parliament. Sri Lanka agreed to a 4-year, $2.9 billion IMF bailout program that has helped boost reserves, stem a fall in its currency, and tame runaway inflation. But the bailout came with strings attached, including austerity measures. Angry voters pinned hopes of a better future on their next leader. In his bid for office, Dissanayake said he wanted to revisit the terms of the IMF bailout. But to pass a budget, he needs parliamentary support. Sri Lanka is in the middle of restructuring about $25 billion in foreign debt. Getting parliamentary backing will strengthen Disanayake's hands in negotiations with bondholders. Those creditors may be reassured if the new president can clarify his policy. With such a narrow bench in parliament, the new president was unable to staff a full roster of ministers. On Tuesday, Dissanayake unveiled his cabinet pick, and it only has 3 members. One is a first-time lawmaker, now Prime Minister, who will handle 5 portfolios. Another veteran legislator is now Foreign Minister and overseeing 5 other ministries. Key ministries such as Finance, Defence and Energy are all run by Dissanayake himself. The snap general election was widely expected, as part of Dissanayak's plan to fix many of the issues that have his hands tied.
Stocks closed mostly lower on Wednesday as investors awaited further economic data and signals on upcoming interest rate cuts. The Dow dropped 0.7%, the S&P 500 slid 0.2%, and the Nasdaq ended flat. The three main indexes were positioned for monthly gains after the Federal Reserve's rate cut on September 18th bolstered hopes for a soft landing. But weak consumer sentiment data this week fed into slowing labor market fears, with stocks on Wednesday giving back some recent gains. Mike Muscio is president of FBB Capital Partners.
We're in a little bit of a lull here now. It was Fed, and now we're kind of waiting on inflation and employment. Both of those figures we'll get some information on here in the next, 5 or 6 trading days. So steady as she goes. As investors, we should be happy to get through the month of September, which is historically the worst month of the year statistically for markets.
Stocks on the move included Amgen, down 5.5%, following mixed data on 2 drugs, sparking concerns over heightened competition. Shares of Apple ended lower as annual iPhone sales slipped in China, according to data from a government-affiliated research firm. Shares of KB Home slipped more than 5% after the company posted a downbeat third-quarter profit. And shares of Ford and General Motors each fell more than 4% after Morgan Stanley lowered its recommendations on the automakers. On the flip side, Hewlett-Packard Enterprise topped the S&P 500 with a more than 5% gain after Barclays upgraded the stock's rating.
OpenAI is headed for a big shake-up, including an end to its non-profit status. 3 top technical leaders at the ChatGPT maker quit Wednesday. Chief Technology Officer Mira Murati was among them. She was often the public face of the startup, alongside Chief Executive Sam Altman. It's just the latest in a string of departures during a tumultuous year. Earlier Wednesday, Reuters reported that the AI company planned to drop its non-profit status. Instead, it will restructure as a for-profit benefit corporation, and that move will see Altman get a big equity stake. Right now, OpenAI does have a for-profit wing, but it's controlled by the non-profit board, an unusual setup that has led to turbulence. In November last year, Altman was ousted by the board over a loss of trust, only to be reinstated 5 days later. OpenAI is also now in the middle of a big new fundraising round. It aims to secure $6.5 billion in new investment, and will see the company valued at around $150 billion. But the round is contingent on the restructuring going through, and it's not clear if the executive departures could have a bearing on the outcome. Earlier this year, chief scientist and co-founder Ilya Sutskever was among those to leave OpenAI, going on to launch his own startup. Fellow co-founder John Schulman then left to join rival AI outfit Anthropic.
It once boasted 47 straight years of profits, but now Southwest Airlines is under mounting pressure. On Thursday, executives and investors gather in Dallas, Texas to discuss a turnaround plan. The low-cost airline has seen passenger numbers stuck below pre-pandemic levels, even while costs have ballooned. That has all but wiped out profit margins and caused its shares to lose about 40% of their value over the past 3 years. In response, activist shareholder Elliott Investment Management has launched a campaign to oust Chief Executive Bob Jordan. It also wants to replace 2/3 of the board. The fund is demanding a special shareholder meeting as soon as next week to drive through the changes. So far, Southwest has stood firm, though, refusing to let Jordan go. It's called him the right leader to deliver change, but now has to show it has a plan to deliver on the promise. Some details have already been shared, including a move to assigned seating and extra legroom seats to attract premium travelers. But analysts want more detail and say the airline is in peril if it doesn't execute the plan well. Southwest has already started trimming routes in a bid to reduce overcapacity. This week it slashed services to Atlanta and asked hundreds of staff to relocate. But some challenges are outside its control, including big delays in the delivery of new jets from Boeing. Southwest gets all its planes from the U.S. giant, which has faced a host of problems over quality and now a major strike. That leaves the airline expecting just 20 new jets this year, or less than a quarter of the number originally scheduled. The delays leave it stuck with older, less efficient aircraft, driving up costs even further.
Union leaders threatened strikes and warned Volkswagen against making what they called a historic mistake. Trade unions and VW company executives kicked off landmark pay talks Wednesday. It's likely to decide how aggressively Europe's biggest automaker pursues layoffs and possible factory closures in Germany. Tensions are running high as VW has threatened to close plants in the country for the first time. That's put it at odds with the key IG Metall union, which has vowed to fight any such moves. The union must also negotiate new labour deals for the core VW brand's 130,000 workers in Germany. Earlier this month, the automaker ended agreements that had safeguarded employment at 6 of its plants there since the mid-90s. Worker representatives have vowed to resist job cuts and blamed top management and the government's faltering support for the automaker's problems. Thorsten Groger is chief negotiator for IG Metall.
This current crisis is not caused by the workforce, but by a series of blatantly wrong decisions and misjudgments by management. Even if the current managers are no longer all responsible for the past, the current managers are responsible for ensuring that in the future it will all continue in an orderly manner.
IG Metall threatened strikes, which are possible from the start of December, and insisted on a 7% pay rise. Daniela Cavallo is chair of VW Works Council.
We are currently experiencing something that many at Volkswagen did not think was possible, especially among the workforce. Over the past decades, we have repeatedly overcome crises together as Volkswagen.
She said they were prepared to compromise, but added it was now up to management to find a solution. VW argues high energy and labour costs in Germany make it harder to compete with European peers. It's also warned Chinese rivals want to grab a big chunk of the region's electric vehicle market. The VW brand's personnel chief said the division must cut costs to stay competitive. He called the firm's situation serious and said labour and management must work together on restructuring. Other German automakers feel the pain too. BMW and Mercedes-Benz both cut their profit forecasts in recent weeks due to weak demand in China.
A potential strike at East and Gulf Coast ports is already causing chaos for U.S. companies, as 36 ports with 45,000 workers could shut down as soon as October 1st. Many shipping firms are now scrambling to import early, shift goods to the West Coast, and even put cargo on pricey flights to get ahead of the potential strike. The dispute between the International Longshoremen's Association Union and the United States Maritime Alliance Employer Group hinges on pay, with current contract terms expiring at midnight on September 30th. As a result, companies like DSW parent Designer Brands have been forced to come up with workarounds, as the fashion firm normally routes about 20% of its shoe imports through the East Coast. According to its supply chain officer, it has now shifted about half of those goods to the West Coast and paid 10 times more than a typical ocean transit to fly in a small shipment of leather boots and dress shoes from Brazil. Along with causing corporate headaches, the threatened walkout could also jam supply chains and reignite inflation ahead of the U.S. presidential election, while also putting a deeper dent in the U.S. job market, as it would be the second major U.S. strike alongside Boeing's ongoing dispute.
3D printing technology and the hospitality industry are converging in the West Texas desert.
It's fair to say we will be the first 3D printed hotel in the world.
Here on the grounds of El Cosmico, a 21-acre hotel and campground, an industrial-sized 3D printer is extruding layer after layer of concrete mixture to form the walls of 2 new model units. The plan is to extend the site by 40 extra acres to include 43 hotel units and 18 residential homes, 3D printed by Icon, an Austin, Texas-based 3D printing company. El Cosmico owner and hotelier Liz Lambert is inspired by the process.
I've never been able to build with such little constraint and such fluidity, and just the curves and the domes and the parabolas. It's a crazy way to build.
Yeah, 3D printing gives you a lot more room to experiment into, or even if you're sort of like quite confident, to do more organic forms and shapes.
That's Jason Ballard, the CEO and founder of Icon.
And sort of as you walk in right away, you see this is going to be a 3-bedroom unit.
The 3D printed buildings will feature domes, arches, and curved walls, architectural features that would normally be too expensive to replicate on a large scale using traditional construction, according to Lambert. The single-story units are printed by Icon's Vulcan, a 46.5 feet wide 3D printer, standing almost 16 feet tall and weighing nearly 5 tons. A print technician monitors Vulcan as its robotic arm and nozzle glide through the worksite, applying a special cement-based proprietary mixture called Lavacrete.
You know, the base mixture, you know, it's a little bit secret, so I won't give you all the formula, so to speak, but it's we've restricted ourselves to a list of like sort of globally and ubiquitously available materials so that we can do this all over the world and do it affordably all over the world.
A typical 3-person crew for these projects include a print technician keeping track of the printer and its preset path through software on a tablet. That's a stark contrast to typical construction crews. And while many are energized by the new process, Milad Bazli, a science and technology lecturer at Charles Darwin University in Australia, says the automation of 3D printed construction could displace skilled laborers like masons.
From the social point of view and the effect in the economy in terms of the local jobs, especially in remote areas, that will be one of the challenges that we need to consider when we're going to the 3D printing method. And I really see that the future will be definitely an more automated way, even if it's not fully 3D printed.
Still, Lambert is excited to be a trailblazer.
People will start to become familiar with 3D printing, but a hotel, I think, is always a great way to be exposed to something you might not be exposed to at home.
President, Excellencies, hell is breaking loose in Lebanon. As I told the General Assembly yesterday, we should all be alarmed by the escalation. Lebanon is at the brink.
This is just the continuation of the very irresponsible and unacceptable behavior on the side of Putin, showing basically to the whole world, especially during the United Nations General Assembly High-Level Week, his true face, that he doesn't shy away from playing the nuclear gamble over and over again. So we, of course, strongly reject these threats, and the position of the European Union remains unchanged.
I have pledged that building a strong middle class will be a defining goal of my presidency. The most practical thing we can do right now is to cut taxes for middle-class families and individuals. We will work with builders and developers to construct 3 million new homes and rentals for the middle class, because increasing the housing supply will help drive down the cost of housing. And we will invest in the industries that, for example, made Pittsburgh the Steel City by offering tax credits for expanding good union jobs in steel and iron and manufacturing communities like here in Mon Valley.
I'm here because I want to show the investment funds that own my own flat the damage they are doing to people like me who work and pay their rent every month. And now, because they want more benefits, they want to raise my rent like 300 euros, and this is the first time I have the chance to show them my anger, my rage, the pain I'm suffering because my home is in danger.
In this gathering, we reject the international meeting of speculators, those who are plotting only with the aim of speculating, commercializing housing, and expelling families from their homes.